131-122 win over the Pacers. It was Embiid's second straight game scoring over 40. James Harden contributed 11 points and 14 assists. In Chicago, the Bulls hosted the Bucks. DeMar DeRozan scored 40, but it was not enough to get the Bulls by Milwaukee. Brook Lopez had a season-high 28 points, while Giannis Antetokounmpo was good for 18 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists in the Bucks' 127-106 victory. And there was one more 40-point game last night. Kyrie Irving dropped 42 on the Rockets as Brooklyn snapped a 2-game losing streak with a 118-105 win over Houston. Kevin Durant had 18 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists in that Nets win. And you see here the win moves Brooklyn up to the 8th seed, which would give them 2 opportunities to advance in the play-in. Despite not having a playoff spot clinched, the Nets still have the second shortest odds to win the entire Eastern Conference, according to Caesars Sportsbook. I want to bring Brian Windhorst and Zach Lowe back in. And Wendy, I just want to ask you, the Nets, we don't even know if they're going to make it past the play-in. We have them now listed as the second favorite in the East. What does Vegas know that we don't?
They must know their liabilities, because I can't explain it any other way. But I will say this. It's looking better for the Nets. They just had their best day in weeks. They woke up yesterday in 10th place. The other 3 teams around them in the play-in all lost. And now they have a golden opportunity to get the 7th seed if they win their next 2 games tonight against the Knicks on ESPN and Friday at home against the Cavs. They will tie the Cavs and clinch the tiebreak. They could be in 7th place by the end of the week. And considering that they were looking at having to go on the road and win 2 games just 24 hours ago, that's terrific news, in addition to the fact that Kyrie Irving has broken out of a little slump he was in with that performance.
Zach, do you think this is a team that could be a factor if they do get past the play-in?
Absolutely. And to Wendy's point, to me, the biggest storyline in the last week of the season is where the Nets finish, because it's not just about where they are in the play-in tournament and whether they can play at home or have 2 shots. Miami's first in the East. Then there's a 3-way tie, 2, 3, and 4. If the Nets can be 7th or 8th, which is their position right now, there's some uncertainty about their seed and there's some uncertainty about who they play. If they can just be 8th, Miami is staring down the barrel at the Nets in the first round. So if I'm the Heat, I'm like, come on, Nets, get into that 7th spot, and then you have a mystery of who they're going to play in the first round. But I don't think the Vegas odds are really that ridiculous, given the Heat have been a little up and down, although I think they've won 6 in a row. They're looking strong. Time Lord is hurt for Boston. Sixers have been up and down. I mean, I'm not sure I'd pick the Nets in any of those series, but as long as they got those 2 dudes with off days between every game, they got a shot.
And what about, Brian, a third dude? They acquired Ben Simmons in exchange for James Harden. He hasn't played for them yet. Is there a chance he could join this team in the postseason?
Dan, he hasn't played for anybody in a year. So they have ruled him out for the rest of the regular season and the play-in. They have not ruled him out for the playoffs. Internally, they believe if they could get him ready, they're not ruling out that he could potentially get on the court. However, having said that, because he hasn't played in a year, they are not going to skip any steps. He will have to go through contact practices and recover, ramp up workouts and recover. And right now he hasn't started that process. So I'm not ruling it out, but I'd still say it's highly unlikely.
Zach, it feels weird to ask because they've never had him, but can the Nets make any kind of run without Ben Simmons, or do they need him for it?
I would characterize the non-Simmons Nets like this. I think they can win any one playoff series in the East with the exception of maybe Milwaukee. And even that, if you get scorching hot, you got a shot. I don't think they can win 3 and make the finals. I think the top of the East is just too good. So can they make a run? It depends how you define run. Can they make the second round? Yes. Can they make the conference finals? Maybe. Can they go further than that without Ben Simmons, with Seth Curry injured? I don't see it.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. Good stuff this morning from Wendy and Zach. Thanks for joining us. We have a special NBA Wednesday doubleheader for you tonight in celebration of the NBA's 75th anniversary season. We're going to have a traditional Nets-Knicks broadcast at 7:30 Eastern on ESPN. And ESPN2 will have a version that showcases the NBA television graphic styles of the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and 90s up to the present day, including the classic theme music by Era, with special guests joining the broadcast. A lot of nostalgia for you tonight. After that one, the Suns and the Clippers square off. NBA Countdown tips off our coverage tonight at 7 Eastern. Get Up is brought to you by Wendy's, a proud sponsor of the 2022 John R. Wooden Men's and Women's Player of the Year. Kentucky forward Oscar Tshiebwe continues to rack up postseason honors. Yesterday, he was named the Wooden Award winner. That made him the first ever unanimous National Player of the Year from Kentucky, which is saying something. Kentucky has historically had a pretty good program. Let's go back to the NFL now, where Aaron Rodgers and Deshaun Watson have signed record-setting new contracts this offseason. That leads us to ask, who is next? Let's look at Joe Burrow. He just led the Bengals to the Super Bowl in his second season. He'll be eligible for an extension next offseason. He's signed through 2023, fifth-year option for him in 2024. Out west, Kyler Murray is signed through this year. He's expressed a desire to get a long-term deal with the Cardinals, who have until May 2nd to pick up his fifth-year option for 2023. And in Baltimore, Lamar Jackson will be playing this season on his fifth-year option. Jackson, obviously a candidate for the franchise tag a year from now, should he and the Ravens not reach a contract extension, which so far they have not. And Kimberly, it doesn't sound like Lamar is in any kind of hurry. What are you hearing?
No, Lamar is not in any hurry, much to our surprise, being that we thought this would all get done last year. But here's the thing. The Ravens want to lock him up, but these conversations are in Lamar's hands. When these talks take place, that will be on Lamar. But one thing I do know is the Ravens are not an organization, unlike some, that could try to put some language in there, try to take advantage of the fact that he does not have a traditional agent. He's rep by his mom. His mom will have a lawyer, somebody look over a contract whenever it's on the table. But Lamar is betting on himself, and he's bucking the status quo, which I love. I love people who bet on themselves. But here's the downside is that a lot of people will say, well, what if he gets hurt? He's a guy who gets hit an awful lot. But the counter to that is, what if he doesn't get hurt? What if this team is healthy? What if he's healthy and they win a Super Bowl? The Ravens know they will have to pay up at some point. The question is just when.
Ravens went through this years ago with Joe Flacco, right? And then he did win the Super Bowl in the last year of his contract, and they had to pay him. Dan Orlovsky, what do you think about the way Lamar is approaching this?
I think it's smart. I think when you are one of the best in the world at your job, patience always pays off, because eventually someone is going to pay you what you believe you are deserving and earned of. Lamar Jackson last year, the Ravens with 6 weeks to go in the season were the #1 seed in the playoffs. He was the MVP of the NFL, and they had one of the most decimated rosters in the history of the NFL when it came to injuries. So you're sitting there and when you have to come to this decision of paying a quarterback organizationally, you guys have heard me say this. Is he good enough to overcome some of the roster deficiencies that we will face when we pay him all this money? Last year proved that Lamar Jackson is. And I think the Ravens can take comfort in that, and also the fact that they draft really well historically. So I think he's the type of player that once you decide to pay Lamar Jackson, it's whatever you want, because you've already proven that you can carry a depleted roster.
Booger, what do you think?
Well, I agree with Dan a little bit. I think patience is the key for both sides. I think if you're looking at it from the organization side, they're simply saying this: we are ready to pay you whenever you're ready, Lamar. However, if you want to wait, we're okay waiting, because we still want to see a little bit more. He was the MVP toward the end of the season last year before everything went haywire in Baltimore. However, we still need to see Lamar continue to progress. And he gets hit a lot, Kmart, so we're not necessarily in a hurry to throw him $50 million a year. So the Ravens organization is willing to be patient. From Lamar's side, he'll say this: hey, if I can stay healthy throughout this season and we can win and play to the level that I think we can play at, I'll be deserving of the highest paid quarterback position in football and that $50 million a year. So I think the word Dan used is patience. I think both sides are willing to be patient for different reasons.
Meantime, Lamar Jackson will make about $23 million this year on that fifth-year option tag, so that'll carry him at least, we think, for a little while. We come back, we're going to talk about Tiger Woods, and here he is out on the course at Augusta this morning. He is obviously, as we know, overcoming significant physical ailments to try and participate in and ideally, from his standpoint, win this year's Masters. There's another obstacle to overcome, though. The weather at Augusta National not